Master and Man by Tolstoy. Chapter 7. From the moment Nikita had covered himself with the sacking and sat down behind the back of the sledge, he had not stirred. Like all people who live close to nature and know real want, he was patient. He could wait calmly for hours, even days, without growing anxious or annoyed. He heard his master calling him, but he did not answer, because he did not want to move or speak. He was still warm from the tea he had drunk and from all his moving about, clambering over the drifts, but he knew the warmth would not last long, and that he no longer had the strength to warm himself by moving, because he felt as worn out as a horse when it stops and cannot go on, whip or no whip, and its master sees that it must be fed before it can work again. One of his feet, in its torn boot, had gone cold, and he could no longer feel the big toe. And beyond that, his whole body was growing colder and colder. The thought came to him that he might die this night, that in all likelihood he would. The thought seemed neither especially unpleasant nor especially frightening. Not especially unpleasant, because his whole life had been no unbroken holiday. It had been the opposite, one long stretch of service, and he was beginning to tire of it. Not especially frightening, because besides masters like Vasily Andreich, whom he had served here, he had always felt that in this life he depended on the chief master, the one who had sent him into this life. And he knew that even in dying he would stay in that same master's power, and that this master would not wrong him. A pity to leave what you're settled into, what you're used to. Well, what can you do? You have to get used to the new as well. Sins, he thought, and he remembered his drinking, the money drunk away, the wrongs done to his wife, the swearing, the church he hadn't gone to, the fasts he hadn't kept, everything the priest scolded him for at confession. Sins, sure enough, but did I bring them on myself? God made me this way, it seems. Well then, sins, where would you run from them? So at first he thought about what might happen to him this night, and then he did not come back to those thoughts, but gave himself over to the memories that drifted into his head on their own. Now he remembered Marfa's visit, and the workman's drinking, and how he had refused the vodka. Now this journey, and Taras's hut, and the talk about dividing the household. Now his own boy, and Mukorty, who would be warming up now under the coarse cloth. Now his master, who was making the sledge creak as he turned over in it. Poor soul, I expect he's sorry himself he ever set out, he thought. With a life like that you don't want to die, not like the likes of us. But when Vasily Andreich climbed onto the horse and rocked the sledge, and the rear that Nikita had been leaning against jerked clean away, and a runner struck him in the back, he woke up, and like it or not he had to change his position. Straightening his legs with difficulty, and shaking off the snow, he got up, and at once an agonizing cold pierced his whole body. When he grasped what was happening, he wanted Vasily Andreich to leave him the coarse cloth, which the horse no longer needed, so he could wrap himself in it, and he shouted after him about it. But Vasily Andreich did not stop, and vanished into the snow dust. Left alone, Nikita thought for a minute about what to do. He felt he had no strength left to go looking for shelter. He could not sit in his old place. It was buried in snow now, and in the sledge, he felt, he would not get warm because he had nothing to cover himself with, and his caftan and sheepskin no longer warmed him at all. He was as cold as if he had nothing on but his shirt. Dread came over him. Father, Heavenly Father, he said, and a sense that he was not alone, that someone heard him and would not abandon him, calmed him. He drew a deep breath, and keeping the sacking on his head, climbed into the sledge and lay down where his master had been. But even in the sledge he could not get warm. At first he shivered all over. Then the shivering passed, and little by little he began to lose consciousness. Whether he was dying or falling asleep he did not know.